Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the great debate between Dave Fennoy and Bill DeWees. I thought I had to throw a little something in there to get us
Oh, that's
going.
good. I like it.
So now, first off, let me just tell you kind of what the ground rules are going to be here for those of you who are watching. I've discussed this with Bill and Dave in advance. I'm going to kind of lay out what I think to be the issue, and then I will give Bill and Dave each a minute or so to kind of state their position, and then we'll do a little back and forth, and towards the end, I will then reverse the order in which we did initially so that they can do their kind of final summation or final arguments here. And I put that on the screen. Let me just see, have I shown my screen yet? I don't think I have. Let me just see. Let me share my screen now. Can everybody see my screen?
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. And I've still got the YouTube video in the background. I'll put that away. Okay, so let me state the case here, and if I get it wrong, I'm sure you guys will correct me. Recently, well, not really that recently, over the past X amount of time, maybe a couple years, Voices.com has adopted a policy of doing these kind of managed accounts where a client will come to them with a job and they will then negotiate pricing with that client, and they will go out to the voiceover community who's in their database and will set a price. Sometimes that price will be much less than what the client has given to Voices.com. And then the VO artist is then presented with the opportunity to either accept or reject the prices that they have set for that particular job. Now, if I'm wrong, you guys can correct me. Now, of late, it has become even more interesting because Voices.com recently acquired, and again, I think I have this right, voicebank.net, which is primarily a repository for union VO artists who are working in the field, and that has caused some additional confusion and whatever. And so to start out, Dave, would you go first and just tell me whether or not I've gotten it right, and then state your case if you would?
Well, for the most part, you've got it right. And I'll just start with my statement. You know, I've been a SAG-AFTRA agent rep voice talent in Los Angeles since 1990. And I've seen the conception and growth of the pay-to-play sites. And I realize that they are perhaps a permanent part of the voiceover landscape. And in many ways, that's a good thing because it offers opportunity to voice actors who are not living in a major market, may not have had the opportunity to be represented by an agent. But I am against one pay-to-play site in particular, Voices.com, who have themselves become what I would call the enemy of the voice actor. In their business model, the voice actor has become merely a commodity. We're a pawn to be played with, a product to be sold as cheaply as possible. They even advertise to their corporate customers that working with Voices.com, that customer will pay 50% less for voice talent. We're sold as cheaply as possible. And nevertheless, talent has to pay an ever-increasing fee. Every year it goes up, plus a 10% escrow fee on jobs when they're booked. And the amount the client is willing to pay talent ends up very often, as you mentioned, being less than what the client said they were willing to pay, sometimes much less, sometimes as much as 75% less. Talent is then offered the opportunity to get better access to jobs by paying more money. $5,000. They call it a premium membership. I call it at the very least unethical. Talent also may not know the size and scope of the job they're working for. So they don't know, they don't have a way of negotiating. Also, if a client wants, say, cut downs, there's a clause in the contract with Voices.com that says that client can come to Voices.com, get those cut downs being commercials made from initial commercials. So you did a 60, now they're going to turn that into a 30, a 20, a 15, a 10. Ordinarily, you would get paid for each of those spots. But now with Voices.com, they'll get paid but you may not see another nickel. And what truly concerns me is that Voices.com now has bought voicebank.net, which has been, as you mentioned, the repository. It's the clearinghouse. It is where clients go to find the agents, agent-represented talents, not only their who they are, but also their auditions. And I'm not sure what's going to happen. We don't know. But if the history of Voices.com and their business model is any indication, it is not going to be a good thing for voice actors.
And before we have Bill do his rebuttal primary statement here, I just want to note.
Shall I go now?
No, no. Can you wait? Hold on one second. Whoops.
I think I will.
Oh no, hold on, hold on. No,
I think I will.
I was muted there, Bill. Before you start, I was muted. I just want to say this: that the lighting in this particular situation does not indicate necessarily any preference for Dave Fennoy, given the brightness of his room and the
halo, that kind of
the halo versus the darkness within Bill DeWees. Go ahead, Bill.
That's a good point. It's like the Nixon Kennedy debates, right? I look terrible, and Dave looks awesome.
Come on.
And and I should say it's no secret. Dave and I are friends, and I have tremendous respect for Dave. And I think one of the value of a discussion like this or debate like this is we come from really two different aspects of the industry. And my hope is that you gain information to make intelligent decisions. I'm not going to tell you what you should do or what you shouldn't do. I've never taken those kind of positions. I'm not even an apologist for Voices.com or defending policies specifically. However, for me, the bottom line is return on investment, my ROI, which I think should be the first thing that any business person thinks about. So that's always the driving, the driving light for me. I think there are really two issues at hand. There's a bigger issue, and that is how online casting platforms are affecting the industry in general, of which Voices.com is a part of that. And then, as Dave has mentioned, there are some specific issues regarding Voices.com. I will say this regarding, and Voices.com and Voice123 are the two big dogs. I mean, everybody else pales in comparison in terms of impact and what they've done. And I will say that they have democratized the industry. They have created more opportunities over the past 10 or so years than any other person or organization, at least that I'm aware of. And so I'm very much a participant in Voices.com and Voice123.com and plan to be going into the future. I want to challenge you, as somebody listening to this, to really think like a business person. I'm a former business professor and consultant, and I can tell you, and you guys know this is not a big secret, that the vast majority of small business owners, which we are out of business within the first 5 years. And the primary reason for that, and if you get a chance to check out a book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, you should do that, because he talks about most small business owners, which we are, operate as technicians and not as business people, meaning that, most approach it as actors or performers. And therefore, that's the view that we have coming into it. And we don't succeed because we don't think of it. We think from ourselves forward, not from the client back to us. And so to really, I think, to be able to understand, have a better global viewpoint of what's going on, it's good to be able to think of it from the client backwards and take more of a business perspective. The only other thing I'm just going to mention again is ROI. And that's going to be something I come back to again and again. My return on investment with Voices.com is fantastic. I wish I could find stocks that presented me with that kind of return. I will say Voices.com, if they operated illegally, and I would have to trust the government to figure all of that out. Or if I found out they were supporting terrorist organizations or human trafficking, I would have a big issue with Voices.com. Outside of that, I'm looking at it, am I being paid fairly in what I ask for? And if we can come to that agreement, I'm being paid. Everything else to me is secondary from there. So at that point, I'll cut off my opening statements.
Okay, Dave, do you have any problems with what Bill has said thus far?
No, and what we're talking about is a bit of a difference of opinion on Bill is a smart guy, very detailed, and knows how to make voices.com work for him. And which is why he's a very great teacher in how to build a business in voiceover. My issue has less to do with, I am happy that it is successful for you, Bill, and I'm happy for the students that you work with who find success with voices.com. My issue with voices.com is I feel like they are ripping us off. I feel like the majority of people who have signed on, and we're talking thousands and thousands of people who are paying that used to be about $200, then $300, now $400, might be as high as $500 a year now. And then the subscriptions, the platinum subscriptions that are at the $5,000 mark. I don't know how many platinum subscriptions they have, but they're raking in money to the tune of millions of dollars. And no, I don't have a problem with people making money. I truly do not. I like money. What I have a problem with is taking advantage of the people who are using this service, taking advantage of people, being greedy and taking too much.
Dave, let me interrupt. Bill, do you feel like you're being taken advantage of?
Me personally, no. I mean, my return on investment is like 1,000%. So, like I said, I'm thrilled, and I understand what Dave's saying. Most people don't have that kind of return, and I've got a thought or two regarding that. But no, personally, no, I'm not being taken advantage of. At least I don't feel that I am.
Yeah, my thought is, I know if I'm getting a job through my agent's getting 10%. I also have a manager. She gets 10% too. So that's 20% out the door, plus whatever my costs are. But when I look at voices.com, and you're already paying them a fee, in your case, $5,000 a year. And then on top of that, they're going to take a percentage of whatever comes in. And despite the fact that you're making good money, you'd be making more if you could have contact with your clients. I know you've made your own clients, and maybe after a amount of time you can, but they discourage and try to keep you from having contact with your client, so that client cannot book you themselves, so that you don't know exactly what you're making.
Okay,
you don't, or how much the job is paying. You only know what is coming to you. So it might be it might be a $10,000 job, and you're only seeing $1,000.
Bill, so you're getting taken advantage of, is Dave's point here. That actually you're being sort of financially abused in a way by voices.com, because the amount they make is substantially greater than the amount they're giving you.
Well, let me back up before I address that and say that just for the record, I don't pay the $5,000. I am a platinum member. If they have a $2,500 version that I do. Again, that may not mean anything to anybody, but just for the record. So it's $2,500 for me instead of $5,000, but it does give you preferential treatment in the searches. So, I mean, there's value to that. And so I do utilize that. You can post, and I always do. I have all my personal contact information available in my bio. And after a client makes direct contact with you, you can share any information with them you wish. So I always say that can be contacted directly by. So I'm not sure. I'm not saying they like that. They probably don't, but it's never stopped or prohibited. Like I know there are some platforms where you just can't do that.
Bill, do you feel there's a moral obligation if you do one job with that client to continue to pay voices.com?
Oh, no, absolutely not. If they were an talent agent, absolutely I would. And they brought that client to me and they're taking a percentage. I always refer them back to the agent to take care of that.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, one of the differences between agent and voices.com is your agent is typically trying to get you more money. Your agent they're going to get 10%. Manager may get 10, as much as 20%. But their job is A, get you work, and B, negotiate for you the best fee they can. Whereas voices.com, well, we're a platform where you can find work, but who they're negotiating for is themselves.
Would that be true, Bill?
Well, I think to a certain extent, yeah, I think it'd be hard to argue that point. I mean, as a business, and they've taken on a lot of outside investment, and I'm sure there's a lot of pressure to produce a profit. I've been in that situation, and I understand it. However, it doesn't excuse unethical behavior. And again, I'm not here, that's a lot of this stuff, at least the way it looks from the outside, is questionable at best. And I would certainly, admit that. However, it doesn't impact my ability to, I look at a job and say, what's the value of this job? Regardless of what, the client's paying on their end. Let me give you, for instance, I was given the opportunity to audition for a national spot last week, I think it was. And it was posted with a budget of $3,000. And to the credit of the account manager, they said, please quote on what you feel is fair for the job. Now, of course, understanding how this all operates, I know the client's paying a heck of a lot more, I'm sure, than $3,000. How much, I don't know. And I'm not saying there's not a value for all the services they offer. I don't even know what all they are. I don't know what goes on behind the curtain. But to me, in my mind, I thought this is a $7,500 job. And that's what I quoted. Now, I've booked a lot of work where I've quoted more than the stated budget. And a lot of people may not realize you can do that. You can quote whatever you want. And the client has the option to, they can choose you or not. Ultimately, it's not in voices.com's best interest to try to give the client lesser talent, because eventually, especially with major advertisers, Fortune 500 companies, they're not going to tolerate that over the long haul. You might get by with it a few times, but over time, it's going to come back to bite you in the rear end. I would like to see more of a culture of a full disclosure. I think it'd be awesome if David Ciccarelli said, look, here's exactly how this operates. This is what we're doing. You may like it, you may not, but this is how we do it. And if you feel like you can operate within this ecosystem, do. If you don't, that's fine too.
Okay, Bill,
I wish there was.
One second.
Yeah.
Dave, how do you respond to that? Do you think, is that really the big issue for you? Is it the issue of full disclosure, or is it the issue of rates?
Well, one, a full disclosure is definitely one. Rates are two. And it's those two things, but it's also what is the mindset of this corporation? The mindset of the corporation, it seems to me, is get as much as you can, pay as little to talent as you can. That we have become, instead of artists that are appreciated and represented well, we're a commodity to be sold as cheaply as possible.
But Dave, aren't we in a capitalistic system that demands exactly that?
No. Capitalism we are not just capitalism. This is also a system of socialism. We have an army, we have fire departments, we have police departments, we build roads. All these things are part, it's capitalism and socialism.
Should government then determine
at the same time? And I'm not saying that this company needs to be socialistic, believe me. But what I would like to see is a little less greed.
Who should determine those rates then, Dave? Who should be making that decision?
Well, if a client comes to you and says, hey, listen, I've got $10,000 to pay voice talent, maybe you should get the better end of that $10,000 as opposed to the short end. Maybe the voice actor who is providing his talent should be getting $8,000-9,000 for that instead of $2,000.
What if it's a new talent that might have just gotten the opportunity to do a national job and is anxious to jump at it?
I would still say the job is worth X amount of dollars. It's not, we're not paying you based on how long you've been doing this. We're paying you on how well you do the job.
Hey, Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I can't argue with that at all. And also, I do think, the idea, I don't think it's smart to run a business where the only goal is to squeeze as many dollars out of it as you can, without any regard to anything else. And I think, history has proven that businesses that do that over the long haul tend to not succeed. So I think it's smart business, and as well as being a decent human being, to pay attention to those things. There is one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is how much flexibility they have within that system. Now, that would come through better education, perhaps. A lot of people may for the first time have heard, oh, I can actually get more than they state as a rate. Absolutely. And I do it on a regular basis. But a lot of people don't realize that you can do that. But I've been with these platforms for like 11 years now. So, I mean, I've been on them a long time. And so it's got to be fair to me. What I feel is fair. Now, what's fair to me now is different than what it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I know what I can get.
Hey, Dave.
And
Bill, let me interrupt a second. Dave, you're commenting on voices.com. And one of the things I always find kind of interesting, and again, I don't know if this is the case with you, but a lot of times when you hear people make a comment about a movie, having never seen a movie, tell me about your experience working with pay-to-play sites.
I have been very annoyed with the pay-to-play sites in my experience. I typically just monitor one or the other. I did a lot more work with Voices 1, 2, 3, and got some clients, booked some jobs, and even some union jobs have come through there. So once again, I think I mentioned in the beginning, I am not opposed to pay-to-play sites. The world is constantly changing, and because of the technology that we have now, if you got a Mac, a microphone, and a high-speed internet connection, you can enter this business of voiceover. And the pay-to-play sites offer opportunity for people. I just want the opportunity to be fair. I don't want people to go in with the wrong idea about how much opportunity they're really being offered, and paying and paying and paying and paying. And when they finally get a job, maybe if it had been through an agent, they might have made $1,000, but now they're just making $250.
So, Bill, how should we define fair?
Well, yeah, that's a tough word. I honestly, I don't like that word a lot, because oftentimes, we end up making ourselves the victim. And I don't feel like any of us are victims of voices.com. I mean, if they say they're going to pay you amount, actually, they guarantee that money whether the client pays them or not. So, you're going to get that money one way or the other. But I think you have to be informed. And I think people who jump into it need to, and I tell this to people all the time, you got to know what you're doing or you'll get killed. You jump into the fray without proper preparation and understanding the system and how it works. It's going to be really tough, but I will tell you this. I make as much or more money through my jobs that I get through pay to play than I do with agents that I do work for. And it's because that's how I quote. Those are the only jobs I go for. Everything, because I know I can compete for those. But people who are just coming in, may compete at a different level, but you still need to understand the system. There's no promise of success just because it's like hanging a shingle out front, hey, I'm an attorney. Hey, I'm a doctor. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. You better know what you're doing because it's not easy.
Okay.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
And let me just, Bill, and let me tell you, that's one of the reasons that I send people to you to learn how to do voiceover, because it is a little different business. And a lot of people, they come to me, learn how to do it, and I can help them somewhat with, getting an agent and getting work. But you really have become the expert in how to work these systems, finding your own work and making the pay-to-play sites work for you.
Now, you know what? As we do this, folks, and I'll be happy to let you respond, Bill, I want everyone else to get involved here and start to contribute some questions. I see one from Mark Chen. Let me interrupt to give this one. Dave's viewpoint, he says, people in business relationships working together in a symbiotic, friendly relationship and all profit by it. Would that be an accurate representation, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would agree as well.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's the way to run a business.
Okay, so here's a comment from Tim, or a question from Tim here. He says, if as a new actor I get a part in Wonder Woman for $10K, I know what my agent gets. I know the studio would pay more for a name actor. That said, the studio client is paying and deciding those amounts, not an agent receiving one payment from the studio deciding how much the actor receives. Comments, Dave?
Oh, say that again, because
Okay.
I kind of missed.
Yeah, so in other words, if a new actor gets a part in Wonder Woman for $10K, I know how much the agent gets. I also know that the studio would pay more for a name actor. So therefore, his point is, as a new talent, shouldn't you be willing to drop your drawers a little bit, so to speak, to take some work that other people may not?
Well, yes, but then if they're going to pay for this particular job, let's say $5,000, and you're the person that they want, you shouldn't get less money for that. There should be the percentage of how much that client is willing to pay should be higher. I don't care what it is. Now from that, oh, well, we're going to get Dave Fennoy, or we're going to get somebody with a bigger name or a star. The price goes up from there. Not, oh, we were going to pay whoever we got. We have $10,000 in the budget. Now voices.com they're still paying $10,000. Now, but voices.com is going to take 8 and you're only going to see 2.
But Dave, I still want to understand.
No, because it's the value to the client, not the value to voices.com.
I understand.
The client is paying a certain amount of money for talent. They like this talent. I don't care if this talent started yesterday or has been doing this for 10, 15 years.
I just
if this is what the client wants to pay, has in their budget to pay talent, that's what that talent should get, as opposed to voices.com saying, well, you know what, we're going to take as much of this as we can, especially since he's already paying an annual fee. They're already taking 10%. So pay the client what they ought to be paid.
So Bill, Dave's point is that, in this game, if a client comes in with a $10,000 budget, voices.com has no right to take anything, any piece of that action.
Well, I didn't say any piece of that action.
Right. No, you did. Yeah. Right. I understand. I understand your point.
Take 10%, take the $1,000.
So Dave, you've determined
especially since voices.com is a bigger talent agent in terms of how many people are being hired for voiceover work than any agents in the United States now.
So you're saying 10% is your number. That's what you're saying.
Well, I'm basing that. Well, yeah. I'm saying 10% because that has been what has been standard for agents.
Okay, so then 10%. You're saying that, Dave, let me clarify. You're saying then that any amount over 10% taken by voices.com is usurious. I
feel that way, yeah.
Bill?
Yeah.
I don't concern myself with that number. I come up from the opposite direction. Let me give you an example. I've got an agent actually who's very vocal against voices.com. And I've booked a number of jobs, corporate type jobs, short little explainer videos. They pay $300 a pop, which, hey, I'll do those all day long. But I can get sometimes $400 and $500 a pop for the same thing through a pay to play site. But I don't concern myself. So I don't sit around worrying, well, I wonder how much the client's paying voices.com. I'm thinking, hey, I'm getting more jobs, more money than what my agent's getting me. I don't care not that I don't care.
Hey, Bill,
obviously, I'd love to get a bigger chunk. Don't get me wrong. If I could, I would.
Bill,
but you see what I'm saying?
Bill, clarify for people who are asking the question, voices.com gets their 20%. When we're referring to this 10%, I'm talking about the additional amount. Explain that to people.
Yeah, there's an escrow fee. And this is something, honestly, I don't understand. And I don't like it. And maybe somebody can explain it to me. But there is a 20%, when you quote for a job, let's say I'm going to quote $500, say for an explainer video. Voices then adds on an additional 20% of that quote. So I bid 500. The client sees $600 as the quote. So Voices takes 20% to handle the money. I can't defend that. I don't. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's not built-in stuff here, but I know how to work the system enough to be able to work around that and still get, what I feel is fair.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know what the client's paying, and I just don't overly concern myself with it because I can't control that part.
Well, part of this bill is not so much that, you're making it work for you, and that is a wonderful thing. And I'm glad you are. My concern is with all those other voice talent out there that don't know the insides and outsides of this, that don't realize that there was a time a few years ago they would have made a lot more money for these jobs, and that our value as voice actors has been diminished. You are making a very good living. You've worked at it very hard. You work at it very smart. I'm not worried about you. You're doing well.
I understand.
You know how to work this thing. My concern is for a lot of our fellow voice actors who may not. I mean, my career has been going on since 1990 in LA. I'm established. up years, down years, but even my down years are pretty doggone good. And I need to use the pay-to-play sites a little bit more, but seeing what they are and seeing what the world has been, our value as voice actors is diminishing.
You know, Bill, before you answer that, we did a survey recently with the DeWees members group in which we found that about 70% of them were making less than $10,000 a year. Now, this is because many of them are part-time, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think of Dave's argument that has to do with the fact that we need to set kind of some rates, some minimum acceptable levels for voice talent? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think today it's almost impossible when technology has basically blown away the gatekeepers and it's an open playing field. It's on us now to become more savvy in how we operate, because it's just not going to happen, and it's that way with most businesses. I wanted to address something because Dave brings up a good point. The idea that it used to be you're working through your agent, you can get more money, and yes, but. And maybe, not for those of us who don't operate within that ecosystem, for lack of a better term, it's not easy to break. That's a much smaller bubble. True. And so the opportunities aren't nearly, because believe me, when I first started, everybody told me, okay, get your agents. And so I got my agents, and I had representation in all these different markets, and I had access to all,
Bill, tell people what percentage of your business comes through agents, and then Dave answer the same.
Less than 2%.
Dave?
Yeah, 90%.
So again, we have two very different business models. How does that affect how you feel about this?
Well, since I'm not making that much money, that it's a smaller percentage of anything that's coming not from agents, and which would include the pay-to-play sites. It's not that big a concern to me for me. But what I see happening on the landscape of voiceover for other people who are trying to get in this business, who are paying that $300, $400, $500 a year. And are those people who are making $10,000 a year, those people who trying to figure out, well, gee, if I could come up with $2,500 to get that premium site, then maybe somebody would notice me and I could book a job. I hear from talent all the time that sign up for Voices123, Voices.com, and they're not booking anything. They're auditioning, and very often they're not even getting listened to.
Bill, what do you think?
Let me finish one thing.
Yeah.
I realize this is not a perfect world, and everybody is not going to achieve the same level of success, but we don't have to make it harder for them.
Bill?
Well, I think there definitely needs to be a buyer beware that if you're coming into this system, this platform, it's not as easy as it may look. I don't know that it's portrayed as being easy. It's easy to get in. Anybody can get in. I mean, that's no big deal. But are you going to survive? And, as I advise people, I say, there's certain things that you better have in place. You better have a great demo. Your auditioning skills better be up to snuff. And beyond that, you better understand how the system works. Because if you don't understand that, it's going to be a long road to hoe, as Bill, they say.
And you don't recommend that people use pay-to-play sites until they really are savvy and know how to play the game, correct?
Oh yeah, I never recommend anybody start there. I think that's that's disaster, and as thousands can testify. But once if I when I'm working with somebody like a Dave or somebody who has a certain level of experience and ability, I can show you how to do this. It's can be extremely lucrative.
Dave, I know you've said to me.
We're going to have to
talk. So Dave, here's the question then. Would you have any objections if Bill gave you some secrets on how to properly utilize pay-to-play sites? Would you feel like you were betraying your cause to use them?
No, once again, I'll go back to the first thing I said.
Okay.
Pay-to-play sites are here. We cannot change change. Change is always going to be coming. And the pay-to-play sites are a change in our industry that, whether you like it or not, they're here. They're here. And I think people should utilize them. So I just don't want people being ripped off by pay-to-play sites. I don't like the idea of our voice talent as just a commodity. Just something. Oh, I'm going to sell this for as much as I can get, but I'm going to give this person that's actually doing the work as little as I can. That's what I'm against.
Bill?
That's what I'm against.
Well, and I'm about empowering people to. I think that maybe the big difference is here is I put the onus on the voice talent and say you've got to be empowered and be knowledgeable so that you're not, so that you can function profitably in that system. Otherwise, you will feel really beat up and taken advantage of. I don't think that's voices.com's fault necessarily. Could they be more transparent? Are there some sketchy business practices? Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes, but some of the things I hear, I think, ugh, I don't like the sound of that. But then I look, okay, am I getting what's fair for my job? So I say, yeah. Am I making more than I make in any other area? Yeah. Let me give you some quick. I had Mallory get some numbers together for me. Yesterday, the past 2 days, I booked and recorded $4,000 in work. $2,500 of that came through pay-to-play sites, and I don't think I did a pay-to-play job that was less than $300, which was a little explainer video. But I booked clients that have taken me on outside of those platforms, and we work at some really competitive rates. So all I'm saying is it can be done, but yeah, you've got to know what you're doing. You have to be educated.
Okay, so that we don't beat the dead horse, I think we've talked about this a lot. I think you've both stated your positions well. Dave, since you started, Bill, I'll let you have the final statement here of what you feel, and then Dave, you can be the last to rebut.
Well, and Dave and I agree. Pay to play is here. And by the way, today the topic is pay to play, voices.com. Next year, it could be something totally different. 5 years from now, it's certainly going to be. Who knows what it's going to be? And the same arguments will continue. But the thing I tend to be the eternal optimist anyhow. But what I look at is the incredible opportunity. And my primary concern is, can I get a fair rate for me? And by the way, a fair rate's going to be different for everybody. When I first started off, I didn't deserve what I'm able to get now. And maybe next year I'll be able to make even more than I am now. But the opportunities are tremendous. And as long as I can get paid as much or more than I would through an agent or what I feel the market will bear, I'm happy with that. I think it's on us, not so much. I'm not worried so much about what voices.com does. What I'm worried about is, will they honor what they tell me they will do? And if I quote this for a job and it's accepted, will they pay me that? And if so, I can live with that. I may not be thrilled with everything else they do, but I can live, I can live with that. And I would just encourage everybody just to get educated. Be educated, because it's not as easy as it looks.
Dave, final statement.
I would say those of us who are voice actors need to hold voices.com and any other pay-to-play sites their feet to the fire some kind of way. When you're a SAG-AFTRA member, you're hopefully have somebody that is negotiating for you what your contracts are going to be, so forth and so on. We're a little more in a world now with the pay-to-play sites and with the world in general, where more of us are just on our own. So I would say the same thing that Bill is saying. Be very careful with the pay-to-play sites. Make sure you understand who they are, what they do, and how to make it work for you, as opposed to, it should be a symbiotic relationship. They're helping you with a career, and you're helping them with their business, because you want somebody that's they're not really representing you, but they're presenting opportunities to you. Well, you want to be able to take advantage of those opportunities, not just they look like opportunities, but they're not. And that is one of my fears, that people are paying that money to voices.com, not really getting the opportunities. And then when they do, they're not making the money that they should, that voices.com is taking more than their fair share of those jobs.
There you have it, folks. Both sides of the argument. I want to thank both Dave Fennoy and Bill DeWees, and for all of you for being part of this great debate. for Fred Gleek and the rest of the crew. Yes, Dave?
I was just going to say, you made a good point. Well, we might do a thing, Bill, that we could record ourselves. You could record showing me how to do this.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That's a great idea. I love it.
And,
not planned, not pre-planned.
Yep.
This is just organic right here. This is as it happens.
Fred brought it up, and I thought, well, that would be
a great idea.
Because I come from a completely different set of circumstances.
And Dave, we could do the opposite. You could give Bill some tips on how to work with agents.
I would love that. Yeah, as a matter of fact. I think
Okay,
it'd be
folks,
fantastic.
we didn't plan this, but stay tuned for that. And thank you all for being here. Thank you to both Bill and Dave, and we'll see you all next time, folks.
Thanks.
And we're still friends, right?
Yeah.
Right.